What is up? Oh, this is legit. I got my light going on. Oh my god. This is cool. This is like some high end stuff right here. Oh my gosh. What? This is cool. This is super cool. What is up? Oh my gosh. This is so cool. Alright, so doing something different tonight. We're actually going to do an interview. Jenna, very excited. Let's see. Jason, how's it going? How's it going? All right, Jenna, we're going to try this and see if I don't mess this up. We're going to find out. Oh, jeez. Oh, click my phone off. Okay. Are we good? All right, Jenna, I sent you a request to join. There we Yeah. Oh my God. What's up?
What's up?
Don't look at the light. That is so bright. Oh my gosh. I got like a rig. It's kind of cool. I got a stand. I feel weird, but
You're standing up right now?
I am standing up.
All right. I'm good with it.
This thing's tall. It's too tall to sit. I don't know. It's weird.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
I didn't tell
Awesome.
you. So the products that I sourced that I was so excited about a few days ago, a week ago, I got them in stock, and we sold, between the two products, we sold 8 in the last 2 days, which is more than I had actually forecasted. So I'm pumped. I'm probably going to be placing a nice size order here coming up. $6
cool.
on
Awesome.
each one.
Awesome. Very cool. Very happy for you.
Thank you.
It's good when it goes that way, and it's funny because when you place a test order and it doesn't go good, you're like, okay, I'm glad I placed a test order and mitigated risk. But when it goes really good, you're like scrambling to get on the phone. Like, okay,
when can I
need like
more?
1,000 units.
Yep.
Yeah, you freak out in a good way because you're ready to scale, right? Like, it's awesome. Oh my God, so cool.
Right. But I'm taking your advice. I'm not going to go crazy and order thousands. I'm just going to do a couple weeks worth and then go from there.
Awesome. And the way I approach it really is, what does the data tell you, right? So, and not just like the estimation like Jungle Scout does, that's good to get an idea, but using a tool like Restock Pro, right? Like, use actual sales data to better forecast where you're going to be at. And something that James taught me that makes a lot of sense is you want to stay on the fence of not having too much inventory, but not running out. Like, you want to always almost be running out by the time you place an order, right? That way
you're not wasting your capital. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it. We talk. You got this. All right. So for everybody who's watching, Jenna, give us a synopsis. Who's Jenna? Why'd you get into Amazon? Why'd you get into wholesale? All that good stuff.
Okay. So my name is Jenna Jackson. I've been selling on Amazon for 6 months now. And I started out in retail arbitrage, going into stores and finding their clearance racks. And then I went to online arbitrage. So finding the deals online. I've always been just a bargain hunter. I go to garage sales and I'm always, trying to find the latest, greatest deal. And once I realized I only had so much time, I couldn't just be clearing out every store. I realized I'm going to hit a ceiling and I'm not going to be able to make that much more money because I have no way of creating more time. I now have 2 businesses and I have 3 kids and they're home for summer break now. So I don't have a ton of time. So wholesale's really...
Jenna's time is a goose egg.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So
the nice thing about wholesale is, for me, after the baby goes down to bed and everybody's, kind of done for the night, from 9 till 11 p.m., I can source and find my products. And then during my daylight hours, the little time that I have during the day, I can make my calls And so I'm not driving to the stores and hauling stuff in. And I found a family friend that I'm paying $8 an hour to box up my items and send them in for me. So that frees up a lot of my time. And and I have one private label product that I invested a lot of money into and a lot of time. And it was so good for me because I learned how pay-per-click campaigns work. I learned how, to optimize a listing. I learned all about the photography and what you need in a picture, in a good picture. And because I did that, now as I'm speaking with these manufacturers, I can now, when I call them up, I'm no longer calling them and saying, hey, I'm an Amazon seller and I'd like to sell your product. And they're like, okay, well, forget you. So are the other 17 people.
You and everybody else.
Yeah. 17 people called me this week asking me to do that. So, but now I can call in and they say, well, how are you going to sell my product? And I can say, well, I'm an e-commerce seller that specializes in finding ways to increase sales of an existing product, because everybody else is going to come in and they're going to say, oh, well, I'd like to sell your product. And of course you would. You just want to jump on the sales that are already existing. Not many manufacturers are looking for more Amazon sellers, but they're all looking for ways to increase sales. So if you can come at them with some kind of a plan or some kind of a recommendation or some kind of advice, it could be something so little like, hey, I noticed you have 7 images, but what if you did like one of my products is soccer related. I said, what if you had a picture of a kid playing soccer with your product? He's like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. And so, I've really enjoyed being able to have the conversations and kind of differentiate myself based on what you've taught me. It's a big game changer.
That's awesome. I mean, it's funny because talking to a lot of people, including myself, we all kind of go through the same progression. It's really interesting. So everybody gets their feet wet with like retail arbitrage, right? It's very low risk. You get through the process, you learn how to ship in inventory, all that great stuff. And then you're like, okay, I live in Jacksonville. Everything's too spread out. It takes me like 8 hours to hit like 4 stores. Not worth my time. I'll do online arbitrage, right? Because that's more scalable. And you're like, all right, cool. And then you realize you're still having to spend like 10 to 12 hours a day finding stuff. And when you do, you can maybe get like 10 units. And then just because you found that deal now doesn't mean that helps you next month.
Right. And if I found that deal, so did the other 7,200 sellers that are doing online arbitrage. So you've got to get them in quick and hope that the price doesn't tank before you sell out of your product.
Yeah, right. So it's more risky in my opinion. And then you start to think, okay, I get how this all works, right? Like conceptually, it all makes sense. How do I scale it? Like you said, right? Like you have a family, like how, like you need to have more control over your time versus like, okay, well, the store opens and closes between these hours. That's when I can work.
Right.
And it makes it easier for you, right? So like what we've been talking about a lot is building a portfolio of inventory, right? So like if it does great this month, it should next month and the month after that. But while that's happening, you've already shifted into what's the next SKU that I'm going to be carrying. And it just stacks and it works beautifully. I mean, it's great that you're approaching it from, and I know you're picking up on all these things, which is awesome. Like what you just said, right? Like I'm not an Amazon seller. I'm an e-commerce business owner who specializes on like in Amazon as a sales distribution channel. Like when you approach it that way, and the blog post I'm posting later tonight and tomorrow morning talks about positioning, right? We talk about this a lot. Position yourself to make it easy to get those accounts. Like somehow I'd love for you to share, if you don't mind real quick, is we were talking about this the other day. You were talking with the supplier. He's like, all right, that's great, but like you got to go talk, or I got to go talk to this person and that person. What did you do to get around that?
So I made a call into a pretty well-known, now that I look back on it, this is like a larger brand that I didn't realize how big they were until I started doing more research. And I was talking to him and kind of building rapport a little bit. And he says, well, I don't know if we're looking for more Amazon sellers right now, but, we'll always, open up the conversation. And so I'm going to need to present you to my sales manager. And I said, okay. He said, so if you could just send me over some information on your company. And as soon as he said that, I know he's just brushing me off, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so I'm going to
Yeah.
email you something over. It's going to go to your
What are you going to send?
So, yeah. So I asked him, I said, okay, well, great. I said, I'd like to be prepared when I talk to your sales manager. You've worked with him for a while. What do you think he's looking for? Like, what does
Yeah.
he want to know about Jenna Jackson and my business? And he says, well, you know, he just wants to get a feel for like how you're going to sell the product and how much you're wanting to do, and you know, just kind of understand what you. And I said, okay, so I'll just spell it out for you. If we can find the right products that are a good fit for you and for I, that we're both making profit on, I'm really looking to spend 10, 15, $20,000 a month with you guys. I mean, I don't do this as a side hobby. And he goes, okay, all right, okay, yeah, no, we don't need to go to my sales.
Changes everything.
I had no idea. Okay, because he doesn't know if I'm just trying to get a good deal on this and, you know, be on my merry way. No, I'm serious. This is my business. This is how I operate. This is how I make my money. So as soon as I said that, he just completely let his guard down. He's like, oh, well, yeah, let me send you over this catalog. And I'm like, okay, thank you, Dylan, for that line. Because
I've said it so many times. But here's the thing, like, think about everything that a supplier questions you on or says they need. It's a qualification filter. That's all it is. They're trying to see if you're actually going to be a good fit for them. And
they're getting a million calls.
Yeah, right. Like, okay, let's run through an assumption of how a supplier would feel when, let's just say, just 2 Amazon sellers contact them per day. It's all the same. Like, there's no differentiation. It's just, yeah, I'd like to sell your inventory. Cool. I need more value than just you buying my inventory. Anybody can do that. Like, what else do you bring to the table?
Right.
And most Amazon sellers, this is why I hate the term seller, because you shouldn't be a seller or a flipper. You should have a real business, approaches things very differently. The fact that you approached it, and you should do this with every supplier phone call, is, no, this is a real business. This is a real company. We just so happen to use Amazon because it's a great sales channel. I mean, you know, it would be dumb for us not to utilize that.
Right.
And when you approach it that way, now they're thinking longevity. They don't want to go through all the work of bringing you on board, blah, 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 and then you're going to be gone in a month, 2 months. That doesn't, again, it's kind of like how we approach products. I don't care that it's doing great now. Is it going to be doing good 6 months from now? They look at you the same way.
Are you going to order from me once, and one of the suppliers says, you know, I asked him, I said, what would you like, you know, to be different about your sellers? And he says, gosh, if I could just have my sellers understand that you can't just call me a week before you need your Mother's Day shipment and you need 10 times as much product as usual. Like, I have to plan that out ahead of time. I need you to answer the phone when I call you, and I need you to give me a heads up, and we need to have a relationship. Like, we need to be discussing this. You can't just send me a sales order. And I'm like, okay. And I'm just taking notes, and that way now I know this is what this guy wants. I'm sure that there's every other manufacturer is saying the same thing. Now that's fuel for me to add to the next conversation. Right? Yes.
And that is the key to consistently getting new accounts week after week after week, because you just pick up on these things and you just ask them, right? Like, there's no like tiptoeing around it being, no, just ask them, right? Like, how could this be a better experience for you? Like, if I was to give you a button, you slapped it, and then working with an Amazon seller was the greatest thing ever, what would that look like? What do I need to do? Because, and we talked about this today, you need to approach it as a partnership more so than just, I'm going to buy your inventory.
Right.
One perspective is no different than you going on Amazon yourself and buying a bunch of stuff. That's not what we're doing here, right? Like, we're actually talking with real businesses. We're building a real business ourselves. And so when you approach them, like, supply chain matters, like logistics matter. Like you said, I'm not just going to call you randomly and be like, oh yeah, I need 10,000 units. Well, you're not going to get them. Like,
that's not going to happen.
I have manufacturing to do. Like, that you have, but when you know these things, it makes it easier for them to work with you and to want to work with you. because they're not going to not sell on Amazon.
Right.
But they'd rather sell to you than a seller because it's the way you approach it and the understanding you have of the industry.
Right. Right.
And that helps tremendously.
Right.
So you've been in wholesale for how long right now?
Month.
That's good though. Like that's great. But like,
no, I take that back. I take that back. I dabbled back in January, February. I had heard, oh, wholesale's so great, and so I found two. Now I find out they were actually distributors, but I went through all the process and I sent in all my paperwork, and I finally got approved. And I'm like, yes, I made it, woohoo! And they sent over their pricing, and I was like, no, I'm doing online arbitrage at the time. I'm getting 60-70% discounts on products, and I'm getting their pricing, and it's like 10. Some of them were 20% off list. I'm like, what? Went to the next one, and I looked at the prices. I'm like, what? Like, no.
Yes.
And so I just quit, and I was like, okay, no, online arbitrage is working for me. I'm just going to do that. And then I started, I started watching your videos, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, make some calls and this and that. I called 4 manufacturers, and I didn't get a yes. And I was like, nope, not doing that. This month.
That's a huge sample size though, right?
Right. And then
it doesn't work if you can't call 4.
And then you said something on one of your videos. You need to be finding 10 prospective manufacturers a day, and I'm like total mind shift.
Minimally.
When I realized, hey, if it was that easy, if I could just call up 4 manufacturers and they said yes, and they had great pricing, and I sent in the order, it wouldn't be sustainable. You wouldn't make money. Everybody would be doing it.
No.
The reason that you have to call so many and you have to really fight your way into these is because it's worth it. And now that I'm looking at, like, my products are selling, Dylan, I'm about to cut a deal with this soccer product, and I'm like,
works.
Oh my gosh, this is so worth it. But most of the Amazon sellers, they do it for 3-4 months, and they do exactly what I did. They go, you know what, this isn't working. It must be this isn't a viable business model. I need to just quit. And they never actually get there. So my advice for anybody that's watching is stick it out, because it's so gratifying. The potential is absolutely there.
Yeah. And you've been doing it for a month, right? Let's call it a month. And so the interesting thing, and I've made this statement multiple times, you realistically could get to the 10,000 plus sales per month within 30 days. You can be on track for that.
That's sick
and
to even think about.
A lot of people are like, what do you like? No, I've called 4 suppliers. I've got nothing. But what you have to realize is, with everything, you have inputs and outputs, right? Mm-hmm. So if your inputs 4, your output's probably going to be 0 just based off the math, right? Let's just work the math. So if we can get up to 10 plus, okay, we might be able to get you 1-2 suppliers every few weeks. Right. Or if you really want to go crazy, you reach out to 20 plus, right? You work the math. That's all it is. And so you can break it down based off the actual conversion rates. Mm-hmm. And I would track all my conversion rates because I want to know. Right. And then I can work it backwards. Okay, I want to add 3 new suppliers this month. Right. Okay, here's how many I need to contact. And then it's not that crazy. Right. So it's really just, it's the volume of input that people are uncomfortable with. Right. Because it's like, wait, I can't just go on disneystore.com and like look for their sales and then buy closeout.
That's not how it works.
No, you can't. So it's different. But the cool thing is, the product you just brought on, the ones that are selling now, will also, assuming you do nothing but restock right now, will still be selling a month from now. Right.
And
that's cool, right?
My soccer product that I'm about to hopefully sign on, he says November and December we're selling about 120 a day. I'm like, what? Like, what? And that's a higher price product for me, but I'm looking at a $35 profit on that. Like, well, like I can't even do that math in my head,
And here's the cool thing, right? We're coming up, fourth quarter's coming up quick. So here's the thing. All the work you do in Q1, Q2
Setting
with
yourself.
wholesale, because you're like, oh, I'm not doing that great, blah, blah, blah. I've got like, 4 SKUs. Okay, but watch what happens when you hit fourth quarter and
Mm-hmm.
all you do is ride the wave of volume increasing from the
Yep.
current SKUs you have.
Right.
That's it.
It's a.
Like it's dumbfounding.
Yep.
So you don't have to be putting up crazy numbers to do like all year to
Mm-hmm.
do crazy annual numbers, right? Because you're probably going to do 50 to 75% of your annual in Q4 alone.
Right. Yep.
It's insane.
Yep.
But and I think you might start to see this now, like you don't need a ton of SKUs.
Yeah.
I mean, really, to be just at 6 figures in sales, you don't have to have
Mm-hmm.
even 20 plus. Honestly, you could be less than 15. Of course, it depends on MSRP and all that stuff, but it's not crazy high.
Mm-hmm.
So you went through a big shift that a lot of people don't get to, and you described it perfectly. Is you do some work, you kind of test the waters, you don't really get anywhere, and then you're like, okay, wholesale doesn't work.
Right.
so
Right.
so so I'm curious, when you got back, or you decided to get back into wholesale and really try it, what made you get to that point, and what was the trigger for you to be like, okay, I'll try this out?
It was. I know you weren't speaking to me directly in the video that you said you need to be finding 10 new manufacturers per day, but I heard it to me, and I heard, Jenna, you're being lazy. Like, it was a total mind shift. And also, if you guys follow Shawn Michael, if you don't follow Shawn Michael, you need to be following Shawn Michael, because I've gotten so much knowledge from him. He goes live and he answers questions just
That dude's insane
all the time. He is legit. I hope
in a
he's
good
watching.
way.
I hope he's watching.
Yeah.
Shawn, thank you so much. But at one point, there was a distributor that I was looking to get into, and I hadn't called him yet. I had been checking into him for a couple days, and I said, so, this distributor does this and this, but they don't do this, and do you think that if I call them, they're gonna say yes, we'll sell to you? And he goes, who cares? Just call them. Like, why aren't you calling them? And I was like, oh yeah, okay, you're right. But
Yeah.
I feel like our fear kind of holds us back. Like, what happens if you ask me a question that I don't know? And that was one of my big fears before I actually started making the calls. Is I had piled up so many suppliers and Vendrive as possible suppliers. And if you're not using Vendrive and you're trying to sell in wholesale, you need to be using Vendrive. And he's not paying me to say this, but I would be a train wreck in trying to keep all of this. Just would not
Especially
work.
with a high input volume, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah, there's no way.
Because a lot of people are like, well, I can do this with spreadsheets. I'm like,
yeah, no.
You're not reaching out to enough suppliers then.
No, there's no way. But really the shift was just kind of like a just do it. And hearing the success that you had in realizing, like, this is, I mean, I'm a big Tony Robbins guru, and all he ever talks about is you have to figure out how to stop trading time for money. And right now I don't have time. You heard what I have on my plate, but I do have a mentor. I have a Dylan, I have a Shawn that are saying, hey, we'll take you under our wing. We'll put ourselves out there. We'll go live for an hour. And I mean, I'll see people on the live video of you guys saying, hey, do you do private one-on-one coaching? And how much do you charge? I'm like, hello, this is your private one-on-one coaching. Just post your questions. I mean, Shawn Michael goes on there for an hour. He's sipping on a drink, and you just fire every question. I feel like 7 questions in one of the videos I asked Shawn, and he just answered all of them. The same thing with you. And so really, really model those who have done it, and just say what they say, do what they do, and stop trying to figure it out for yourself. Just do the process, because it works, and it works really well.
And that's where I've really tried to focus the blog content, the recorded, like real like training stuff. Is, listen, I get this is overwhelming. I went through it. I spent 3 to 4 months when I first committed to wholesale not having a clue. Literally just like I reached out to every distributor. And here's why I never recommend distributors. I went that route. I did all these things everybody's naturally inclined to do. And I can tell you from experience how it's going to work out. And it's not.
Right.
And then finally figured it out. Not like, oh, I discovered something crazy. It's just I figured it out.
Right.
And the blog post of like, here's how we actually find step-by-step wholesale products, and here's how we find the brands, and here's what we contact them with. That's it. There's nothing more to it. And it's funny because people like you, Mark, Julian, all like, you guys are just doing the process, right? And it's not like we invented some crazy thing that's some hack strategy. No, it's doing the work. Like, at the end of the day. But the cool thing is, because a lot of people are like, well, there's too many people doing wholesale. No, there's not. There's too many people talking about doing wholesale who dabble.
Right.
If you look at the people who actually do wholesale, like really do it, it's not that many. So it's not a big deal, right? So you don't have that much competition, first of all, but I try to lay it out to where it's a process. That's it. It's a linear process.
Right.
And you just gotta have, you gotta do the volume. And I get the time thing. Like, it's funny. When I really first got started, I got crazy for like a few weeks and did reach out to like 50 suppliers per day, which granted, that was email, so totally different. But I burned out for like a month because it was too much. And then I cut back, and I was able to grow working 5-10 hours a week. And why I say spend 90 to 95% of your time sourcing is because most people don't have a lot of time.
Right.
So if you really want to make this happen, you got to prioritize.
And luckily you can do the sourcing after hours too.
Yes. And it's beautiful. And what's funny, like, I wish I had VinDrive when I got started, to be honest. Like, this is why we built it, is because like I didn't have a process set up that could really like do that for me. So I literally used spreadsheets, Gmail folders, all this stuff, and so much got left. Like, I still go back through my folders and I'm like, they sent me a price list. I didn't look at that for 6 months because I didn't see it, so it makes it harder, but I get it. So how are you liking wholesale so far?
Oh my gosh, it's such a high. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to make, cold calls, and I don't want, it's so fun. Because I'm starting to figure out what these guys are going to say and be able to anticipate. It really is the repetition of just having a lot of conversations, and then kind of put yourself in their shoes. Like, if I had created this product and I'm trying to get it out to the masses, what would my concerns be? Stop trying to be a seller making profit and try and think, okay, what's going through their head and how can I bring value to them? So I mentioned before, I have a private label product. And so when I'm calling these manufacturers, I'll kind of glance at their listing and just see what it looks like. And most of the time, the listings are not outstanding. They don't have 7 pictures. They've got one with a whitish gray background. They've got 7 words in their title. Their key, their bullet points and so I'll bring that up in conversation. I'll say, hey, listen, if we can find, a price point, we can find products that work for both parties. Here are some of the things that I might suggest we edit. And I'll just go ahead and give them the value up front. And one of the suppliers, I said, whether or not this works out is a relationship between the two of us, here are some things that I would move forward with improving. And, the soccer product, I called the guy up and I said, you have 7 words in your title. You need to have 40, because that's where your searches are coming from, those words in your title. And I said, and he says, well, what would you suggest? And I just started brainstorming. I said, what about this and this? And then I said, how about football? FUTBOL for any of the Spanish speaking community. He goes, oh my gosh, you're genius. You had a thick accent. I'm like,
soccer.
but because I was treating his product as though it was my product. If it were my product, what would I want to do to optimize this listing or to bring value? So I'm
gonna stop you real quick because you skated over something that's kind of a beautiful moment. You made a suggestion, right? So you immediately gave value, like, whatever, regardless what happens, here's value. But then he said something that immediately positioned you perfectly, which was, what do you suggest? You're an expert now. He's asking you questions. You're in the power seat. And so then it goes to, okay, well, here's all things we could do. But you know what? If we can make this work together, I'll handle all that for you.
Right.
Because then I'm incentivized to do that, and we'll both benefit from that. Now it's, all that's getting done. Sales are going to grow. Jenna's doing all of this, and it works for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Easy decision.
Right.
Not difficult. And the whole point of these conversations, and it's a game, right? Like, it's kind of like you're saying, like, it's exciting, and it's kind of the same conversation. It bounces it a little differently.
Right.
And it's really a game. You can say something and immediately know their response. Because you get to a point where, like you said, repetition, you've done it so many times. I know what you're going to say.
Yep.
I said this to elicit you to say that.
Yep.
And then it's easy. And it's awesome that you did that. But, like, remember, when those things happen, you're like, I just won.
Yeah.
That alone right there.
Yeah, that was a shift.
Just got me the account.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're going somewhere with a point, but I wanted to stop you right there because that was good. But
yeah, no. Anyways, no. So anyways, the conversation with this soccer product, he's called me 5 times in the last 2 days saying, "Hey, what do you think about this? And how do you?" And so I've now become the expert. And in his eyes, which I've been selling on Amazon for 6 months, he's been selling on Amazon for 2 years, and teaching him all these things. And he said, you know, I really hope we can figure out this freight thing, because freight to Florida is looking like it's going to be kind of high, and my cost is a little. He goes, I really hope we can figure out this freight thing, because I don't know how else I could repay you for everything that you've done for me. Like, he's hoping that we can make it work because of the value, and he wants my help, because really he's a 60-year-old guy that created this as a side job. He has a full-time job. He doesn't have the time to learn about Amazon. He says, the only thing I've learned has been through Amazon YouTube videos, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, well, let me help you.
You've been watching the wrong videos, sir.
Yeah, but I had this fear before I started calling these companies. I had this fear, like, what if they ask me a question that I don't know, and I don't know the lingo, and I don't know all about this. And the first conversation, I was teaching him so many things about Amazon, and I'm like, oh, these guys really aren't well versed at Amazon. They're not going to throw a million questions at you don't know. Not a big deal.
Yeah, and you realize it's not a big deal. It's such a casual conversation. Again, you're calling a person.
Yeah.
That's it. It's conversation. And their business model is not Amazon.
No.
It's not. They're gonna spend the minimal amount of time on it unless they make it a focal point themselves. And most don't. That's where you come in. Right. You don't have to know the ins and outs of Amazon. You just got to know more than them and provide value. And so you use something called the reciprocity rule, which is you immediately gave so much value that he feels the imbalance. So he's thinking, okay, you know what? I see value. I need to get back to even. How can I give that value back? Yeah. Because I want to. Like, as a human, you want to do that. Right. And so he's now willing, because of the positioning that you used while talking with him multiple times, how can I do this? Right. Right. So now it's easier for you to go back and say, hey, you know what? We're at 30%. What can I do to get us closer to 40%? Is it volume increase? Is it a certain dollar amount? What is that? And then he even told you freight might be an issue. Yep. Perfect. Let's now solve that. Maybe we find a prep center closer to you, and that's an easy sell. Yep. Cool thing is, you're now in a prime position to eventually, sooner or later, we don't know, get an exclusive deal. Yep. This is how you do that. Yep. You don't call and say, hey, I'd like to get an exclusive deal. I sell on Amazon. Nobody cares. Yep. Yep. Like, you have not provided any value. Right. The higher you position, and this takes multiple times once you have the account, all that good stuff, it's easier to then say, hey, you know what? I'd really like to take over a little bit more responsibility with your brand, and be more integrated with your brand as a partner kind of thing. Is it, are you open to the idea of us talking about having an exclusive agreement where I'm the only authorized Amazon seller. Obviously, you can revoke that at any time. Just let me know. In that way, I can just, we can continue going with this, but I'll be able to scale it a little bit better.
Right. Yep.
Well, if you've already provided so much value and you're so high on their level, they're at least open to having that conversation. And you say, hey, listen, I don't know what that structure would look like right now, but I'd love to open up that conversation and see how it would benefit you and me more.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
You've already provided tons of value. It's already been a mutually beneficial deal. You want to do more of that? Yeah, I'm down. Like, and you use what like, this guy, it's a side brand. It's a side asset for him. So he doesn't have time to do that. So you being willing to not only showcase what you're able to do currently, but then say, you know what, I'd like to take on more responsibility and help you even more because it benefits both of us. That's good context for him, because it's not like, oh, I've got plenty of time, it's not a big deal, I'll just hire somebody else. It's no, like that would actually help a lot.
Right. More
sales. It's easier for me. Yeah, I think that might be better. Way easier to do.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So what do you think's been what was your biggest hurdle getting back into wholesale, and then how did you overcome that?
My biggest hurdle, the time was a big one. Like I said, I have 3 kids, and I realized I can do sourcing at night, but I still need to make the phone calls during the day. So I actually hired somebody to come over. She's called a mother's helper, and she actually watches the baby while I'm working, so that, I don't hear the baby crying in the background, and I can focus on that. So that was for me, it was like, okay, am I willing to invest the money in paying a babysitter, $100 or $200 a week to watch the baby, because I'm going to take this to the next level. So that was a big one. And really, I think just putting everything into Vendrive and keeping it all, just seeing, you see the funnel, you just see them dwindle down, and I've got, this big long first column and these little teeny tiny short columns, and it's visual. It's like, hey, Jenna, you got this big long one and these little tiny ones, you need to move some of these over to here. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And I over Memorial Day weekend, I made up a tracker with 50 circles, and I said, over the Memorial Day weekend, I want to find 50 new suppliers that I can call next week. And I didn't hit it. I didn't find 50 new suppliers. I found 33. And I got to the end of the weekend, and I was talking to my husband. I'm like, I didn't hit it. He's like, babe, you just loaded 33 new suppliers into Vendrive, and they're good ones. You said these are actually like really good ones.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so now I think just doing it, like just do it. So don't question it, and don't say, oh, I wonder if it works. Oh, I got one negative response. Just keep calling. That's awesome.
Yeah. And you're still going to get told no. I don't care how successful you are. It doesn't matter. You're still going to get told no. And there's times where you go, okay, great. Have a great day. And there's times where you give a little pushback and you use certain things, and you obviously use positioning the whole time, but the time is the biggest one. And so when we kind of built out that pipeline feature, it was, okay, if I sat down and I had an hour right now, just an hour today, what would I do? Right? Like, would I go try to find new products, or would I make a phone call, or like, would I send emails? I don't know. So we set it up to where it's like, okay, no, here's where the business stands, period. If I need to make phone calls, here's a group I can just start picking up and calling. Or, okay, I actually just got this price list. I obviously need to scan that, or I'm still waiting on one. I need to send that email. And it's easier, especially when you don't have a lot of time, to just sit down, know what needs to get done, high priority tasks, and then just work your way through them and keep moving the business forward. Because it truly does not take 20 plus hours a week to do this. It really doesn't. Now, granted, as you grow, because you're stacking, you're building that portfolio of products and SKUs, it gets way easier. But even getting started, it doesn't take 40, 50, 60 hours a week. It just doesn't. But it's using your time appropriately. And that's the biggest thing. So see, Karen's got a question asking about how much money do you need to get started with wholesale? Is it like private label? It's not like private label. And Jenna, you can speak to this more because you actually have a private label brand. Private label is a much larger initial investment, whereas wholesale, even just placing a test order can be fairly low. Mm-hmm. And so there's really no like minimum to get started with. I mean, well, I would say minimally $1,000, and that's like lower end. But you don't need 10 grand to get started with though either. Like I got started with like 2 grand. Like you don't need a whole lot, but just keep in mind that the smaller amount you have to get started with, just based off the math of compounding, it's going to take a little bit longer to get to a goal as somebody who had 5-10 grand and got started with. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, it's not necessarily how much do you need, it's how much do you have available to get started with.
Right.
And so if you have 500, you can start testing a product with $500. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's not like private label in that regard.
And Karen, I'll just jump in. So private label, you're looking at a minimum. If you're shipping over from China, you're looking at minimum 5-6 grand is what I've heard. I actually sourced mine from the US, so I paid a little bit less, but still a couple grand all in. And my first 2 products, I placed my test order, was a $250 test order. And then I'm going to order 3 weeks worth. So it's going to be between a $750 and $1,000 order. So if that gives you a little bit of context, and it's a product that's selling for $22.99. So if that gives you a little.
Yeah. And that's a good point, is a lot of your test orders are typically under 500, easy. Mm-hmm. Under 200, yeah, fairly common. And that's what I'm saying. You can have $500 and start testing a SKU. You're not going to test a lot. You're going to test one. If it goes good, you'll scale it up, and then you'll wait until you have enough capital to place another test order, keeping product A still churning. It's just going to take longer. That's not a big deal. You know, at the end of the day, it's not about building a business like Jenna or like myself, like James, like Julian, like Mark. It's what is your situation? Where do you want to go? And then what does that path look like? For some, it's shorter than others, right? Like if you have 50 grand laying in the bank, it's going to be a much, much, much shorter process.
Yeah.
Than me getting started with 2 grand, right? It's just the math. Yeah, but it's not bad. That's the thing I like about wholesale. Like people think it's this huge, expensive, like ordeal to get started with, but it's really not. Like
and I would even argue it's a little less expensive than online arbitrage, because I've lost some money on some products that didn't sell on online arbitrage because you're going so wide. You're trying so many different products and figuring out what you can and can't sell, and buying 20 units and then trying to list it and realizing, oh, I can't even sell that. I'm like, oh, Jenna, you got to do these things first. But I'm so grateful that I did the RA and OA before, so that I could learn how to sell on Amazon before I went into wholesale. Like I do think that a hybrid approach, like you said, is a great approach.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of mitigating risk, right? So I don't think it makes sense for somebody who's never listed a product on Amazon, go buy 25 units and try to figure that out.
Right.
No, go to Home Depot, go to Walmart, go to Target. Target's probably the easiest one. Scan everything, find 5 units. They don't even have to make money. They can break even. Just go through the process of, okay, let me create a shipment. Okay, here's how I label. Put that together, have it go through it, and then sell. That experience alone makes it way easier. And it's not a complicated thing to list and ship and all that stuff. But if you don't know how to do it, it's much easier to learn with 5 units than 500.
Right.
You know, so I think it makes sense. If you've yet to sell a single unit on Amazon, go somewhere locally, buy something that you're not going to lose money on. Again, doesn't have to make money. You're just getting the experience of figuring out how this works.
Yep. Or just find stuff around your house that you haven't taken out of the package yet and sell that.
I have so many books, and I'm like, oh, I'll list them. And I'm like, but I want to keep them. So tough. But, even your experience with private label, which not a bad experience, but you now have another perspective and another skill set that you can apply while you're talking to these suppliers, right? Like there's things that you understand, even just conceptually, that like I won't, because I've never done private label.
Right.
I can only make assumptions. And so you'll have more understanding of working with an actual manufacturer, like a factory, and getting that figured out and what that looks like, right? So you actually understand what your suppliers go through, and like, hey, you can't just call up and order 10,000 units. Like, it's not how that works. We got to make those things.
Right.
So go through these things, even if they don't make a ton of money, like RA, probably not OA. I don't think that makes sense. Just stick with RA, just to get the experience, and then go. But like, honestly, you can do that tomorrow night.
Yep.
Right? You can find 5 units tomorrow night that at least break even, do that. And then once that's done, it's so easy. Like, I kid you not, like when I was in Paris for a week, I took like a $200 Chromebook, and I knew I had inventory that was going to be shipped out on Tuesday or Wednesday. We were like 2 days there. So I pulled it up. In my email is the carton, weight, dimensions, all that stuff from my prep center. I plug it in, click ship, and email them the labels, shut down my computer, and I'm done. And it took all of 5 minutes, and that was like 500 units. So it took me like 5 minutes.
Crazy.
To process 500 units. You know what I mean? Like, it's so simple. Because the cool thing about wholesale, and me and James talked about this not too long ago, is especially using a prep center, just because time-wise, it is no harder or easier for me to process 2 units as it is 2,000 units. Now, it takes longer time to process, but I'm not touching product. So it takes the same amount of time for me to ship 2,000 units than it does for 2. That is scalability. Now, I pay more in variable costs because I'm paying per unit in prep, whereas the higher volumes you can do in your own warehouse will decrease because you will have fixed costs, but it's not bad. I also don't have to pay warehouse rent and all that good stuff, but at some point it will make sense. But it's good. Like, Jenna, I feel like you've gone through this process over the month of kind of like really seeing the realities of this business model, taken aback from just the things that are kind of like thrown out there about it. Like, I feel like you actually know now and have seen and experienced the realities of what this business is and what it takes to really get moving with it.
Yeah, just diving in full speed ahead has been I've learned so much in the last month. Oh my gosh. I've watched your videos so many times. Like, I feel like I can finish your sentences. Like, when I'm speaking with suppliers, I feel like I'm Dylan just saying those things. But, Tony Robbins says, if you find somebody that's really good at what they do, just memorize what they do. Like, don't try and reinvent the wheel. Just do what they do. So my advice is go through all of for people watching, go through all of Dylan's past videos, read through all of his blog posts, and just do exactly what he says. Don't try and reinvent the wheel, because it works.
Yeah, I mean, VinDrive's blog is basically every concept, an ounce of anything that is my wholesale business. Like, literally everything. If you want to know anything about my business, that's it. Just read every blog post, because I have everything in there. Like, now I'm trying to really dig deeper into these concepts for new blog posts. But everything's there. Like, there's no payment gateway. There's no like expensive course for you to buy. Honestly, like, just reading the blog post will save you $2,000.
Yep.
That's it. And we'll give you $2,000 to now go spend on inventory and actually have a real business. But it's funny, like, to your point, like, emulation, like I kind of do the same thing. Like, so whenever I have to do like public speaking, like in front of people, way different than this, but I think of, okay, I'm kind of an introverted person. This isn't really normal for me. So I'll emulate somebody, and I actually emulate, we were just Tony Robbins. Sorry, mine went blank. Tony Robbins. And I watched his stuff, just anything of him, and then I just emulate how he would approach that conversation. And then I just do that. And then it's easy, because now it's not Dylan trying to figure it out. It's
Tony Robbins.
It's, like it sounds odd, but it makes sense. And so you can do that with anything. Like, how would whoever approach this conversation? But at the end of the day, it's funny. I was at a bar not too long ago, and this incredibly drunk guy is trying to hit and pick up on the bartender. Okay, whatever. Guy spends like an hour beating around the bush, kind of flirting. He's obnoxiously drunk. But he could have just spent 5 minutes, actually way less, and just been like, hey, a little intoxicated, find you attractive, would you like to get out sometime? We can save ourselves an hour. Worst case, they say no. And sometimes they do. It's the same concept, right? So know that the possibility of them saying no and denying you when you call a supplier is there. It's going to happen. It is. Plain and simple. Like, especially when you're getting started, like 80% of the time at least, that's going to happen. Get used to it. Get comfortable with it. And don't have this fear of like, well, what if they ask this question? What if they ask a question I don't know? Then you say, actually, I'm not really sure about that. I'm going to look into that. And then you move on. You realize, and like all these, because I went through all of this too. So you would call and just have the biggest amount of anxiety of like, well, like, what if they know that I'm new? What if this? What if that? And then you realize they're just like, yeah, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we can do that. Well, actually, do you sell on Amazon? We're not sure. We kind of aren't really accepting any third-party sellers right now. Okay, then I say this. Oh, okay, that's not a big deal. I mean, you're talking to Bob, John, like Deborah, whatever. Like, it's such a casual thing. It's really no different in calling to book an appointment somewhere, really.
And to your point, one thing that I've really started doing in my more recent phone calls has been going very well for me is, of course, I'll go in and I want to talk business, and they want to talk business too. Their goal in the first 60 seconds of that conversation is to figure out if I'm legit or not legit, if they want to do business with me or they don't want to do business with me. My goal in the first 60 seconds is to steer the conversation so far away from business that I want to know, what's the story behind this product? What's your role there? What do you do? Oh, and they list 7 things, and so you basically do it all. I said, are you getting paid like you do it all? And they're like, story of my life. And then, so are you working 1 million hours, or you get to go home, or so what? And you get them talking about them. And so what got you to work at this company? And when they start talking about themselves, and if you can get them to go off on like this long tangent and just talk about themselves, you got them. Now they want to do business with you because now you're a human. You're not an e-commerce seller or an Amazon seller. Now you're Jenna. Now you're Dylan, and you're relatable.
It's harder to deny Jenna than it is some Amazon seller who called us again today. Right. So like I learned this when I was a personal trainer. So when this sales aspect of personal training is very different. It's very in person. You have to make an ask. You have to. At like 20, I was like, all right, well, it's going to be $3,000 and it's paid in full up front. That's awkward. That's really awkward, especially when I look in their face and be like, no, I'm serious. But what I realize, and it applies in a different way, is there's layers to people, and especially what they want. So I knew, and this isn't in a mean way, but I knew if I got my potential client, to get emotional, and this wasn't manipulative, it was me getting to the root cause of why they were there. Right. So typically it goes, well, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? Well, I want to lose weight. Nobody wants to lose weight. Come on. Like, okay, well, why? Is that important to you? Oh, well, yeah, like I haven't been feeling good lately. Okay, well, if you don't mind me asking, like, what, why haven't you been feeling good? What's going on there? Oh, I just, I can't really get up to speed. I get really tired walking. Okay, well, why is that such a big deal? I'm peeling back the layers, and eventually you get to a point where the guy says, I'm afraid that in 3 years I'll die from cardiac arrest and I won't be able to see my son get married. Now he's got a tear. This is a grown man crying in front of a 20-year-old. But we got to the point. We got to the real cause of why they wanted to do something. So I do something similar, but instead of making suppliers cry, make them laugh. So we joke, right? Like you pick out these little things, like Jenna was saying. My goal was to make them laugh within the first 5 minutes before we even talk business, right? Because like Jenna said, they're actively qualifying you the whole time. Immediately they're qualifying you. And so I had a distributor, actually grew up in Boca Raton here in Florida. I'm in Jacksonville. Knew of Jacksonville, lived here for a little while. I was like, oh, interesting. That's cool. And then the thing about Jacksonville is you joke about how terrible Jacksonville is because it's kind of nice, kind of terrible. And so I'm joking with him of how shitty Jacksonville is, even though like I like it and everybody likes it here. But you do these things, and he's laughing. I was like, you know, you just pick out these things. And like Jenna said, now it's Dylan, it's Jenna having a conversation with somebody, and then you can get to business. You built rapport, great. Now position, get the account. That's it. I mean, it's really like a linear process. And you just do that every single time. Like every single time you call, you're looking for things to joke about. Like Jenna was saying, like, wait, so you basically do like everything here, right? Like, so are you the CEO now? Like, what's going on? And then they're like, oh yeah, like nobody talks to them like they're people.
Right.
Right? It's like, hi, I'd like to open a wholesale account, please. I'm sorry, am I the dentist? No. Like we're building a relationship here. We're going to work together, especially if you're talking to a rep who you're going to work, you know, personally with for a very long period of time. Start that relationship off right. Right? It's kind of like going on a date.
Yep.
You don't immediately go for like, so like we're going to get married. What's going on? No, you have chit chat. You get to know, are you a psycho? Am I a psycho? Like there's a few things we got to do first before we can then be like, hey, you know, let's actually go out on a date and hang out. It's a progression. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. And the other thing that I would say is, to your point, you had said, you know, if somebody says no, still ask them for permission to call them back in a couple months or to follow up with them. And so what I've started doing is, as I'm having the conversation, I'm writing down every single thing that they say. Oh, their boss, there's 2 owners, one's silent, one's not. He lives 50 minutes away, so it's a long drive for him. So when I call him up in 3 months, I've got all that information in Vendrive. I don't even remember who the guy is in 3 months, but I pull it up, and I have all this paragraph of notes. And I call him up and I say, oh yeah, so how was your commute this morning? He's like, I'm like, oh yeah.
You remember that? Yeah.
And it's
you
like,
stand out.
Yeah. So
and that's the whole point of like the CRM note feature within Vendrive is for that reason. Again, high volume, that's too much to remember. But if you can take those key elements of conversation, context, whatever, dump them out of your brain into Vendrive, you don't need to remember, because when you go to follow up, you just pull it up and you're like, yeah, no, okay, cool. Yeah, guy, it's got a long commute. I got to work that in there somewhere. And just call him, right? And like, call them multiple times, especially if you're thinking long term. This is the difference between being a seller and then building a real business. Is like, think long term about things. And so like, yeah, you didn't get it today. That's okay. You might honestly get it next week.
Yep.
It might take you a year.
Yep.
But you get it a year from now and you realize it just increased, you know, it's now 10% of your sales. Like, it's a huge skew for you. Only because you followed up. And there's all these barriers to getting accounts, which is why the dropout rate with new wholesale sellers is so high. Because like, dude, I've gotten nowhere. Okay, well, how many suppliers do you reach out to? Like 20. That's not a lot.
Not gonna work.
Like, I can't tell you how many I reached out to like over the years. Like, it's ridiculous, but you just keep doing it. And like, you get to a point where the harder it is to get an account, the more excited
better
you get, because you're like, what are they keeping from me? Like, that there's value there. Like, if I get to sign up for an account with a supplier online without talking to anybody, I'm not excited. I'm not. It might be profitable for a few months, maybe a year.
Until everybody else discovers it.
I mean, how am I protected, right? Like, how much value is really there? And so I'm looking at it from the perspective of, what's the moat? The bigger the moat, because if I can get through that and get on the other side, get on the inside of that moat, that product's going to last for a very, very long time and be very profitable because they protect it. But now you're on the inside. And so you work harder and harder and harder. You might have to have 3, 4 conversations that are an hour, 2 hours long before you can finally get them to be like, you know, we'll talk, we'll take a look, and we'll send you a price list and see if we can make it work. Great.
Karen just asked a question. So, she said, you offered a call back, but do you ask to leave your contact information as well? And I'll let you answer this, but I personally have not, mainly because if we haven't found a synergy or we haven't found an action item or a value add right away in this call, she's not going to be thinking about me in 2 weeks and want to call me back. She may, but just my brain has said people are never going to call you back, but it's very important for me to call her back. So yeah. I really haven't.
Yeah. So here's the way this works. When you don't get an account or you don't fight to get an account, they're like, oh, we'll keep your contact information on file and call you if anything changes. Nothing changes. They're not incentivized to change it. Like, you're not special at this point. Right. So
and if something
it's
does
not like
change,
you have some unique solution that you're bringing.
If something does change, they can tell me about that in 3 months when I call them back.
Yeah, exactly. And like, honestly, like, if you haven't built enough rapport by then, what makes you think they're going to call you first? Right? So there might be a list of 10 suppliers or sellers that they're going to call before you. And so I don't even leave anything because they're not going to call you.
Yeah. I don't think it can hurt, but I just don't see it panning out to be all that profitable. That's all.
I think it's neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt, but 99% of the time it's not going to turn into anything besides you actually proactively calling them back. You know, it's not like they're like, oh, we need to add another Amazon seller. They never and trust me, I have to ask them. I'm like, all right, guys, seriously, like, every one of my suppliers has said this when I got started with them. What do you guys actually do with that? Like, dude, we don't do anything with it. Like, we don't care that we got other stuff going on. We got like 5 other, distribution channels, and we have, actual buyers, a logistical term that we work hand in hand with. You're not top priority. Okay, that's good to know. So now I'm just not going to waste my time.
Right.
But I know that if I really want it, I'm going to call them, right? It's going back to dating. If you're into somebody and you're like, I'm just kind of busy right now, like, I'll call you if I free up some time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. But if the weekend gets here and I'm just like, hey, I'm sure you're super busy, but, if you got any time this weekend, I'd love to hang out. Well, if they do, they're like, yeah, let's hang out. But if I don't do that, they're going to look to go hang out with their friends who matter more than me, than call me up, because we're assuming we haven't built any rapport yet. So you can relate everything back because it's still social dynamics. Like, there's a lot of correlation and crossover there, but yeah, I wouldn't care about too much. I don't know, it's never panned out. I'm very particular about things that don't pan out enough to where I'm like, yep, I don't care. I'm not going to do it. Like looking at the sponsored products when you're doing research. Like, yeah, there's probably some stuff there, but it takes way too much time. And so I just skip it because, again, if you only have 5 hours a week, you really, really have to be picky with where you spend those 5 hours, because 10, 15 minutes adds up very quickly, and you don't have that. Or you do, I don't know. It depends. It's all situational. So cool. So I don't even know what time is it. Oh my gosh. I'm like using my phone. I've never done this, but this lighting's on point. I'm really pale. Welcome to Florida. All right. So Jenna, I'm gonna let you go. We're gonna get out of here. Thank you for spending your time with me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you for teaching me all this stuff. And please, everybody, just do what Dylan says. And he's figured out what to do and what not to do. So just do what he does, and it works.
It's been interesting when you jumped into the group, and then I'm like, Jenna Jackson, Shawn Michaels, Jenna Jackson. I'm like, she's everywhere. And then you're emailing me, you're messaging me like, guys, I don't say you can message me and give you my email for funsies. Do it. Like, actually message me. Like, I was doing this before we jumped on here, before doing accounting homework. Like, people message me and ask real questions. You can do that. I don't care how long they are. I don't care if you have 20. Preferably email me 20, though. Don't do Messenger. That's not as exciting. But you can always email me, Dylan, DILLON, @vendrive.com. I will respond. I will give you answers in detail and
You'll
ask,
get
did
paragraphs, so
this,
be ready. You'll get
yeah.
paragraphs.
It's as long as it needs to be to really get the point across and answer it. And I'll ask you at the end, if this made no sense, tell me. We'll figure this out. I'll get you to where you need to go. And even with VinDrive, you'll notice if you're a trial user, we have a pop-up that's actually a communication with me that says, hey, I noticed you haven't added your first 10 suppliers. How can we help? Like, what do you need, right?
And this sounds so stupid, but it legit worked for me. I had 3 suppliers loaded in.
You reach out to me.
And yeah, it was I was on like my first week of my trial, and I had 3 suppliers loaded in, and I get this pop-up and it says, well, we see that, most successful sellers have 10 loaded in within the first week. And I'm like, I'm almost at the end of my first week. I'm going to be successful. I'm like, I'm so stupid. But I got on and I got my 10 loaded in. I'm like, okay, good. We're good. So it works.
Yeah, and it's not just some like template thing. And it's not like a random number, like a template thing. Like, we actually analyze data and look at, like, okay, there's a clear difference between the people who add 10 suppliers and those who don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and we'll even congratulate you. Like, hey, we noticed you did that.
Mm-hmm.
You're killing it. Like, keep doing that week after week,
mm-hmm.
because we know, and I say 10 a day for a reason. If you do that, I know where you'll go. I can, with a high, probability, estimate where you're going to be at just based off your inputs, right? Because it's inputs and outputs. All we can control is inputs. And so VinDrive is set up to help you have a higher input without making your eyes bleed staring at Amazon for 20 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. So, all right. So we hit a lot. We hit a lot here, which is good. It's good. It's nice to not have it too broken up, but really kind of see how you've done with everything, because I wish we could do more of this, just because I say the same thing all the time, because it's like, there's no difference there. There's no new thing. It's just, this is the process, do the work. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's good to see somebody and be able to interview you and really get your feedback on, okay, here's where I was. I dabbled with it a little bit, but like, not so sure, to like where you've gotten to now, and then the trajectory you're currently on.
World of difference.
Wholesale. Yeah. And has it really been like too complicated for you?
No, not at all. In fact,
that's the thing. It's a simple process. It's just not easy.
I don't want to say it's too easy, but it's not difficult. It's not convoluted at all.
No, and the cool thing is, like, once it clicks, like it's clicked for you, I can tell. You just repeat that process, and then you get to a point where getting suppliers isn't an issue. It's not. You know how to do it week in, week out, and then eventually you actually have to scale back, because you're like, I can't. If I added 3 suppliers right now, like, I'd have to go raise another 20 grand.
Mm-hmm.
In which case you should go do that, but still, like, there's a very clear shift where that goes, and I think you're getting there pretty quick. So it's awesome. So before we end, any last words of advice of, what should everybody be doing who's struggling, who's where you were at and would like to be where you're at right now, and on that same track and trajectory?
My biggest suggestion is ask a million questions, and get on as many of these videos as you can. Find mentors, and if anybody wants to, reach out to me, please, I'm happy to pay it forward. Dylan is one of the only, Dylan and Sean are really the ones that I feel bring the most value without asking for you to buy $5,000 packages of training I'll be honest, I spent $5,000 on a package and I did get value out of it, but I didn't get anywhere near the value that I got out of just using Dylan and reaching out and studying what he does and reaching out. So as I'm going through and I'm sourcing, I'm literally making a list of questions. And as soon as I have a question pop into my head, I've got on Evernote on my phone questions for Dylan and Sean. And Sean will go live on one night of the week and I'll ask my questions to him. And then Dylan will go live on another night and I'll ask my question to them. And they always answer all of my questions. And I'm like, I'm getting free private coaching. So take advantage of it, because it is so rare to find sellers that are just so open and wanting to help and wanting to, pay it forward and share the information. So
awesome. Yeah, I mean, every like literally everything's there. Like it's in video, it's in the blogs.
Yeah.
I mean, we even set VinDrive up for the way we do business.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really
a lot of the people selling these software packages will give you 75%, and they'll say now the other 25% is X dollars, per month. And it's, no, you've put it all out there. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's right. Like we have VinDrive, right? Like we charge for VinDrive, but you don't have to be a VinDrive user to do all this stuff. Like we wanted it that way to where whether you're a user or not, you can come to this community and go from no business to hopefully 6 figures plus within a relatively shorter period of time than doing it on your own and without having to spend thousands of dollars that then take away from the capital that you could have spent on actual inventory and growing. And that's kind of how we're approaching this whole thing. And it's fun. It's really cool. But like, ask me questions. Like, send me tons. Like, it's funny. I get emails and like, oh, sorry for so many questions. I'm like, no, send me more. Like I'm a free resource, and like it might take me some time to get to you. You could think accounting, homework, and exams for that, but I'll get to you and I'll get those answers to you. And if I see you taking a lot of action and actually moving forward with stuff and applying what advice I give you, what we talk about here a lot, I'm going to be so much more open to doing more with you. It's just the way it goes. If I know that, kind of like Jenna, you're going to come in, you're going to do the work, you're hustling, and you're actually putting forth that effort and making progress, I'm going to say, hey, what do you need to get to the next level? I will proactively reach out to you and say, what do you need to go from where you're at now to where you want to be at? What's holding you back right now? Let's jump on the phone. Like, I'm willing to do that, but you got to show me that you're making progress with it and you're taking it serious. Because again, we like e-commerce businesses, not sellers. Totally different mindset. So yeah, I mean, and you guys are like, you're one supplier away. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the thing that really gets me pumped and keeps everybody moving forward who's into wholesale, is like, one more supplier can mean a world of difference for this business for the next year plus. And that's what you guys got to keep remembering. You're literally one supplier away. So when you're like, all right, I've called 20 Dylan, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, that's just not, it's not panning out. Didn't get anything. Cool. Make another phone call. Because that might be the one that approves you and gets you started. But if you didn't make that phone call and then you didn't think, okay, I'm one supplier away, two different paths, completely two different paths. So, all right, guys, thank you so much for spending your time with me tonight. I appreciate it. Jenna, special thanks to you.
Absolutely.
This was fun. Our first user interview, and it's cool. I love it. I get geeked out with this stuff. So, all right, guys.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you for all the content you're putting out there for everybody. It's massive.
I'm working on getting some better content. So, like higher level, more in-depth stuff. It's gonna be good. Like, we were talking about negotiation. So tomorrow's blog post is gonna be on negotiating with suppliers, how to get better pricing, all that good stuff, and positioning, which we talked a lot about tonight. So it's good stuff. But if you guys have any questions, message me on Messenger and Facebook. You can also tag me in your question via a comment in the group, or send me an email again at dylan@vindrive.com. If you haven't yet signed up for VinDrive, like, it's 14 days free trial. Cancel anytime. We'll still love you. We'll still give you all this stuff. And if it helps,
it's
awesome.
cheap.
It's so cheap. It is. So, like, full price is $27 a month.
Yeah. And it's everything. It's not like layers and
it's everything. It's one price. That's it. And again, if you hate it, cancel. Super easy to do. We're still gonna love you, and you can still be in this group. No gateways. So, all right, guys, have a great rest of your week. Reach out to suppliers 10 a day. Jenna said it, not me. All right, guys, have a great night.